Hey guys, how's it going? Preparing here. So yesterday I made a video about how I solve the problems that I run into maps, which are kind of like the high-end problems. How do you sustain maps around the mid-70s? You know, that's the challenge that I'm facing. And because I kind of, in a way, came to a solution a little bit, by accident, but nonetheless, I wanted to present that solution to you guys. But I understand that a lot of problems that you guys are facing with maps are not necessarily the problems that I'm facing with maps. I know most of the problems that people are seeing is the maps are too difficult. I go on the forums, Path of Exile, people talk about this game, it's like, oh, this game sucks because the death penalty is too big. It just makes me want to lull. But anyway, I kind of understand that this is a problem for some people. But it really comes down to pacing yourself. See, when you see a person like me play the game, I already know what to expect. So I don't really need to slow down because I know what these limits are for a lot of things that I play. But when I play a very new build or a build I haven't tried before, I haven't seen tried in the past, I do go by certain, guidelines, I guess you can call them. So pretty much the basics is you find a new zone, you do the zone if it's efficient, and then when your character is really strong for that zone, like when you're just demolishing everything with almost no challenge at all, you move to the next zone. So, you can kind of take this as an actual zone by zone, like a literal statement, but also in a way with like the difficulty barriers in the later parts of Merciless and in maps. So if you beat Cruel difficulty, stepping into Merciless, Act 1 is not going to be too hard except for the optional quests, which are very high level. But for the most part, you're just going to cruise through to Ledge, and Ledge is going to seem pretty difficult, I guess, at first because your character is low level. But if you farm Ledge for quite a bit, you get some good items. Ledge becomes really, really easy. Then you can do the rest of Act 1. And you might want to do the optional quests later. Those are a lot harder. Then you get to Act 2. You do Fell Shrine if you want a slow but easy kind of progression, or Western if you want a fast but dangerous type of progression. Do those until you're just owning it up. Very, very easy. The level stuff doesn't really matter because for a lot of builds, largely the bow and melee based builds, the skills of your gems don't really matter. So your level doesn't actually matter that much. What matters is how strong is your character compared to the content. So when it feels strong, you can move on. That's really the rule that I've been going with. So when it feels really easy to do Fell Shrine and Western, maybe tough it out another level or two. Maybe go back and do the optional quests in Act 1, the optional quests in Act 2, move on to Act 3, farm City of Sarn until that becomes wicked easy, then move on to Docks until that becomes wicked easy. Then you can do Lunaris if you want, but that's not really that efficient. So if you don't want to do that, you can start doing maps. Maps, you set your own difficulty. If you want to do the easy maps, you just invest alterations and you just do easy maps. That's it. But there are still some things that people need to keep in mind. When you do maps, you don't really know what you're going to face. You don't know if you're going to face like super dangerous monsters or super easy monsters. For instance, you could do a minus maximum resistance mod, which is a suffix which I tend to avoid. I think it's personally the most dangerous one out there. But nonetheless, if you run into it, let's say you get a 50% area size, minus 15 all resists, minus 15 capped resists. So you look at that and you're like, well, it does have the area size, I'm going to do this map. Well, if you do that map and you get a bunch of monkeys, or I don't know, even Roas, it'll be fine. But if you do that map and you run into alchemists, or if you run into maybe some lightning spark mages or something like that, you might not be so fine. So that's why maps kind of pose a risk, because for the player that's just going into them, they don't know what to expect. So because of that, I can kind of recommend certain guidelines that I feel are somewhat important that I've experienced in this map system. So I can tell you guys that until you hit like 68 maps, the most damage you could really ever take is about 3,500 in one hit. So that's talking like negative 60 chaos resist from an extra damage map from a chaos alchemist. Okay, so that might, like the mine version, might hit you for like 3,000, 3,500, that kind of area. And there's a few other things that might get close to that, like if you have a map that the mobs do extra damage as like cold or fire or lightning, and let's say you run into a road, increased physical, So it'll get its regular damage, it'll get multiplied by the increased physical, and it'll get multiplied by the added elemental damage. And it might also have the rare road, that is, might have an added elemental damage mod as well. So, you know, that can also hit for like 3,000 to 4,000, maybe a little bit more if you get really unlucky. Essentially, I can't really say that, you know, you need this kind of HP, you need this and that, because some people compensate for the HP value by having extremely high armor with extremely high resists. Some people just go CI, so they have an abnormally large life pool. But, you know, there's a few things to really bear in mind. So when you're doing maps, you do not want to be under max resist. So if one of your resistances is not 75, don't do the map. If you have less than like 3,500 life, don't do the map. And if you do have around 3,500 life, make sure you have some chaos resist, because that chaos shit is going to hurt big time. You know, largely, these are the requirements, but, you know, if you're playing like a melee, you're probably going to need a lot more. If you're playing the kind of class a little bit more upfront with the mobs, if you don't really know what to expect, if you're inexperienced, you probably want a little bit more, especially if you're playing hardcore. I mean, I'm talking hardcore from the beginning, because, you know, I understand people like to play default and stuff, but, you know, in the end, my feel of the game is that the goal is to play hardcore eventually. So I think you should be playing like this. You should be playing Path of Exile in the way that you don't want your character to die, and you kind of play it to experience it, to understand what to expect. If you understand everything that there is to the game, you can kind of dodge all the scary stuff, and you can learn what the weaknesses of your class might be, or the weaknesses of your current gear set. So it's really just a matter of knowledge, experience, but I hope with these suggestions that I've given you guys, with the rough limits of what you would need in these areas, I think you guys should do pretty well. But in the end, you know, if your character feels strong, move on to the next step. Just don't be overconfident about it. You guys don't want to pull another Cybrix. So that's about it, guys. See you guys tomorrow.